Picture this. The year is 1496. A man in his 50s sits on a throne in a mud palace along the Niger River, ruling an empire larger than all of Western Europe combined. He controls more gold than any monarch on earth. His armies have never known defeat on their home soil. His cities bustle with commerce from 3 continents, and yet something gnaws at him. Despite all this power and wealth, he knows his throne was stolen. He has no royal blood, no ancestral claim, no divine right to rule. The women of the previous dynasty literally mocked him when he seized power, telling him in their language that he would never be a true king. They called him Askia, which means he will not be it. Instead of hiding from this insult, he turned it into his royal title. He became Askia, the man who would never be king. And then he proved everyone wrong by building the greatest empire West Africa had ever seen, creating an educational system that would make European universities look primitive, and transforming an insult into a legacy that would echo across 5 centuries. This is the story of how an outsider with no claim to royalty became the architect of African intellectual supremacy. Stories like this rarely make it into the history books we were handed. If you're fascinated by the hidden architects of Africa's greatness, then make sure you like and subscribe. The Songhai Empire in the late 1500s stretched from the Atlantic coast to what is now Nigeria, from the salt mines of the Sahara to the forests of modern Ghana. It controlled the most valuable trade routes in Africa. Gold flowed north across the desert to Europe and the Middle East. Salt, that precious commodity worth its weight in gold, moved south from the Sahara mines. Slaves, unfortunately, moved in both directions. Manuscripts and books crossed these routes in numbers that would astonish anyone who thinks Africa had no written tradition. The empire's wealth was staggering. When people today talk about Musa, the famous ruler of Mali who supposedly crashed the gold market in Cairo, they often forget that the Songhai Empire, at its peak, dwarfed Mali in size, wealth, and power. The man who would become Askia the Great was born Muhammad Ture around 1443 in the city of Gao, the beating heart of the Songhai Empire. His origins were humble, and his ethnic background was contested. Most historians believe he came from Tukulor or Soninke ancestry, meaning he wasn't even ethnically Songhai. His father was named Baru Lum, and oral tradition claims his mother, Cassie, was the sister of Suni Ali, the fierce warrior king who had built the Songhai Empire into a military juggernaut. Whether this family connection was real or invented later to give Muhammad some shred of legitimacy, nobody knows for certain. What we do know is that by the standards of royal succession in 15th century West Africa, Muhammad had absolutely no right to the throne. He possessed none of the sacred symbols that entitled someone to rule. He came from the wrong ethnic group. He had no divine mandate. Everything about his eventual rise to power violated every traditional rule of Songhai kingship. But Muhammad had something more valuable than royal blood. He had brilliance, ambition, and an uncanny ability to read the political winds. He rose through the ranks to become a general under Suni Ali, the legendary warrior who ruled from 1464 to 1492. Suni Ali was a complex figure. Military histories describe him as perhaps the greatest military commander West Africa ever produced. He conquered Timbuktu in 1468, took Jenne in 1475, and expanded Songhai territory to unprecedented size. He was also, by most accounts, brutal to his enemies, and particularly harsh toward Muslim scholars. The Muslim chroniclers who wrote about him centuries later called him a tyrant and a heretic, though some of this animosity probably came from the fact that he burned and pillaged their beloved Timbuktu and tormented the scholarly class. When Suni Ali died in 1492, probably by drowning during a military campaign, his son Suni Baru took the throne by acclamation in January 1493. This should have been straightforward dynastic succession. The old king dies, his son becomes the new king, everyone moves on. But Muhammad saw an opportunity. He looked at Sunni Baru and saw weakness. More importantly, he saw someone who wasn't sufficiently Muslim for the tastes of the urban elites and scholarly class. Muhammad positioned himself as the champion of Islam against a ruler who, like his father, maintained too many traditional African religious practices. He formed an alliance with the Muslim leaders of Timbuktu, who had suffered terribly under Sunni Ali and wanted revenge against his dynasty. He also secured support from Mansa, a Muslim chief in the region. On April 12, 1493, just 3 months after Sunni Baru took power, Muhammad's forces met the royal army at the Battle of Anfao outside the capital city of Gao. On paper, this should have been a massacre. Sunni Baru commanded superior numbers. He had the legitimacy of the throne, he had the support of traditional religious leaders and military commanders from the eastern provinces. Muhammad's rebel force was smaller and cobbled together from disaffected Muslims and political opportunists. But Muhammad won a decisive victory. Sunni Baru fled into exile, and the Sunni dynasty that had built the Songhai Empire came to an abrupt end after just 1 generation of rule. This is when the daughters of Sunni Ali supposedly hurled their insult at the usurper. They told him kiya, or variations meaning "he will not be" or "it is not his." They were saying, "This throne isn't yours, you'll never be a real king, you're an imposter." Muhammad, displaying the psychological warfare skills that would mark his entire reign, adopted their insult as his royal title. He became Askia Muhammad. He took the very words meant to delegitimize him and turned them into the name of a new dynasty. It was a power move that announced to everyone that he didn't care about their traditional rules or their opinions of his legitimacy. He had the throne, and he was keeping it. But Muhammad understood that military victory alone wouldn't sustain his rule. He needed legitimacy, and he needed it from a source that transcended Songhai tradition. He needed Islam. In 1496, just 3 years after seizing power, Askia Muhammad embarked on one of the most famous pilgrimages in African history. The Hajj to Mecca is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, required of every Muslim who can afford to make the journey. But Askia's pilgrimage wasn't just about religious devotion. It was a calculated political masterstroke designed to secure Islamic legitimacy for his stolen throne and to advertise the wealth and power of his empire to the wider Muslim world.
The scale of his pilgrimage was extraordinary. Historical accounts say he traveled with an escort of 500 cavalry and 1,000 infantry. That's 1,500 armed men accompanying him across thousands of miles of desert and foreign territory. He brought 300,000 pieces of gold. Think about that number, 300,000 pieces of gold. He allocated 100,000 for travel expenses, 100,000 for charitable donations in the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, and 100,000 for miscellaneous expenses and gifts. This was Mansa Musa level wealth on display, and Askia knew exactly what he was doing. He was showing the Islamic world that the Songhai Empire was as rich and powerful as any kingdom on earth. When he reached Cairo, the political capital of the Islamic world at that time, Askia met with the Abbasid Caliph. Through a combination of impressive displays of wealth, demonstrations of piety, and probably some skilled political negotiation, he convinced the Caliph to grant him the title of Caliph of the Sudan, meaning Caliph of the West African lands. This was exactly the legitimacy he needed. A ruler appointed by the Caliph in Cairo carried religious authority that superseded any local tradition or custom. The Muslim scholars who had supported his coup could now point to his Cairo appointment as proof that his rule was divinely sanctioned. The traditional Songhai religious leaders who questioned his right to rule found their objections overridden by Islamic law.
In Mecca and Medina, Askia was extraordinarily generous. He donated huge sums to the poor. He established a hostel specifically for future pilgrims from West Africa, ensuring that his subjects would have a place to stay when they made their own pilgrimages. He consulted with Islamic scholars about how to properly govern an empire according to Islamic principles. He spent time learning from judges and theologians, and most importantly, he recruited. When he returned to Gao after nearly 2 years away, he brought with him scholars from Egypt, Morocco, and the Arabian Peninsula. These weren't just religious teachers, they were administrators, legal experts, mathematicians, astronomers, doctors, and philosophers. They represented the cutting edge of Islamic intellectual achievement, and Askia was importing them wholesale to transform his empire. Upon his return in 1497 or 1498, Askia Muhammad set about restructuring the Songhai Empire from top to bottom. Where his predecessor, Sunni Ali, had been primarily a warrior, Askia was primarily a statesman. He divided his vast empire into 5 provinces, each governed by a viceroy who reported directly to him. Under the viceroys were governors, usually members of the royal family or trusted servants. He created a professional bureaucracy with specific ministers responsible for different aspects of governance. There was the Balama, who commanded the military, the Farimundia collected taxes, the Haikoi commanded the navy of war canoes that controlled the Niger River, the Kore Farma handled relations with foreigners, the Ware Farma managed property, the Hari Farma oversaw fisheries. This wasn't a loose collection of conquered territories held together by military force. This was a sophisticated administrative state. Askia standardized weights and measures across the empire, making trade more efficient and reducing fraud. He appointed trade inspectors to major commercial centers to ensure fairness and collect duties. He organized a standing professional army rather than relying on temporary levies of warriors. He created an imperial bodyguard of 3,000 elite cavalry and archers. He built a fleet of war canoes under unified command. Everything about his governance showed systematic thinking and long-term planning. But his most transformative achievement was what he did with education. Askia Muhammad made Islam the state religion, but unlike many rulers who imposed their faith by force, he didn't compel conversion. Non-Muslims in his empire could continue their traditional practices. What he did do was pour enormous resources into Islamic education and scholarship. He made Timbuktu, which Sunni Ali had brutalized, into one of the greatest centers of learning in the entire Islamic world. He rebuilt the Songhai Mosque, which became the heart of a vast educational complex. He invited scholars from across Africa and the Middle East to come teach, offering them generous salaries and support. He built or expanded schools in Gao, Jenne, and Walata. By some accounts, during the reign of his successor, Askia Daud, Timbuktu alone had 180 educational facilities, teaching 25,000 students in a city of only 100,000 people. That means 1 in 4 residents was a student.
The educational system that flourished under Askia and his successors had 4 levels. The primary level introduced students to the Quran, basic Arabic literacy, and fundamental sciences. The secondary level taught grammar, Quranic commentary, the hadiths or sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, Islamic jurisprudence, mathematics, physics, chemistry, history, and business ethics. The superior degree level was highly specialized and could take 10 years to complete, equivalent to a doctoral degree. The most accomplished students and professors formed the Circle of Knowledge, a kind of scholarly elite that served as advisors to rulers across West Africa. When kings and emirs faced difficult questions about law, governance, or policy, they sent messengers to the Circle of Knowledge in Timbuktu for guidance. The libraries of Timbuktu became legendary. Scholars accumulated personal libraries containing over 1,600 manuscripts each. There was no central university library, but the combined private collections created one of the largest concentrations of written knowledge in the medieval world.
Estimates suggest somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 manuscripts existed in Timbuktu at its peak. These weren't just religious texts. They covered astronomy, mathematics, medicine, chemistry, physics, history, geography, poetry, philosophy, law, and languages. The manuscripts were written primarily in Arabic, but also included text in Fulfulde, Songhai, Soninke, and Bambara. This was a multilingual, multidisciplinary intellectual powerhouse that would have made contemporary European universities look provincial. The book trade became one of Timbuktu's most profitable industries. When the traveler Leo Africanus visited in 1526, he wrote about the astonishing number of books being bought and sold, noting that manuscripts sold for more than any other merchandise. Scholars traveled from as far as Egypt and Syria to study and teach in Timbuktu. Some of the most famous scholars in Islamic history emerged from this environment. Ahmad Baba as-Sudayn, who lived from 1564 to 1627, served as the last chancellor of Sankore University before the Moroccan invasion. He wrote over 60 books on subjects ranging from law to medicine to astronomy to philosophy. Muhammad Bagayogo received an honorary doctorate from the prestigious Al-Azhar University in Cairo when he passed through on his way to Mecca. These weren't provincial scholars isolated in the African interior. They were internationally recognized intellectuals who could hold their own with anyone in the Islamic world. Now let's put this in perspective. While Askia Muhammad was building this educational infrastructure in the late 1400s and early 1500s, what was happening in Europe? The University of Oxford existed, having been founded in the late 11th century. The University of Paris also existed, but the explosion of European universities wouldn't really happen until the 16th century and beyond. And those universities that did exist were far smaller and served far fewer students than what Askia created in West Africa. The printing press had only been invented by Gutenberg around 1440, and printed books were still relatively rare and expensive. Meanwhile, in Timbuktu, there was a thriving industry in handwritten manuscripts covering more subjects than most European universities taught. Askia's military campaigns expanded the empire even further. He defeated the Mosi in 1498, justifying the conquest on religious grounds since their ruler had refused to accept Islam. He captured territories to the north, reaching into the Sahara Desert itself. To the west, he incorporated much of the old Mali Empire, which had declined significantly from its peak under Mansa Musa. By 1512, even the Mansa of Mali was paying tribute to Askia. The Songhai Empire at its height stretched from modern-day Senegal on the Atlantic coast to Kano in present-day Nigeria, from the salt mines of Tagaza in the north to Borgu in the south. It covered over 1.4 million square kilometers. To put that in modern terms, that's roughly the combined size of France, Spain, and Germany. The wealth flowing through this empire was staggering. The salt mines of Tagaza produced the white gold that made fortunes. Gold from the southern regions moved north in caravans of hundreds or thousands of camels. Enslaved people, tragically, were bought and sold in significant numbers. Kola nuts, ivory, exotic animals, cloth, horses, luxury goods from Europe and Asia all passed through Songhai territory, and Askia's government collected taxes and duties on all of it. The Niger River, controlled by Askia's war canoes, served as a liquid highway carrying goods and people across hundreds of miles. Cowrie shells imported from the Indian Ocean served as currency for internal trade. The economy was sophisticated, monetized, and integrated into global trading networks.
But Askia's genius wasn't just in conquest and commerce. It was in creating systems that would outlast him. The educational institutions he built continued long after his death. The administrative structure he created kept the empire running. The trade networks he formalized brought wealth for decades. He understood something fundamental about power.
Military force can win territory, but institutions create lasting civilization. An army can conquer a city in a day, but building a school creates influence that lasts generations. Askia Muhammad ruled for 35 years, an impressively long reign for any medieval monarch. But age eventually caught up with him. He became blind and feeble in his 80s. In 1528, several of his sons, impatient for power and concerned about succession, staged a coup. They forced their father from the throne and placed his son Musa in power. Askia Muhammad, the man who had seized power through force and held it through brilliance, was removed by his own children. It was a bitter irony. He was exiled to an island in the Niger River, the same fate he had imposed on others decades earlier. But his story didn't end in exile. In 1537, another son, Ismail, deposed the current ruler and invited his father back to Gao. Askia Muhammad returned to the capital he had ruled for so long, now blind and ancient, but still revered. Ismail gave him back his green turban and saber, symbols of his authority and achievements. Askia Muhammad died in 1538 at approximately 95 years old. He was buried in a pyramid-shaped tomb made of mud bricks in Gao. According to tradition, all the materials for the tomb, the mud and wood, came from Mecca, brought back from his famous pilgrimage 40 years earlier. The tomb still stands today, recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site and the largest pre-colonial architectural monument in the region. The Askia dynasty that Muhammad founded continued ruling the Songhai Empire until 1591. That year, a Moroccan army equipped with gunpowder weapons and cannons invaded from the north. At the Battle of Tondabi, the Moroccan forces, though vastly outnumbered, used their superior firepower to defeat the Songhai warriors who fought with traditional weapons. The Moroccan invasion marked the beginning of the end for the Songhai Empire. They plundered Timbuktu, arrested or killed many of its scholars, and destroyed countless manuscripts. The famous Ahmad Baba was deported to Morocco, and most of his work was destroyed. The vibrant intellectual culture that Askia had built never fully recovered. But the legacy endured. The manuscripts that survived the Moroccan invasion and subsequent decline are now precious artifacts of African intellectual history. Families in Timbuktu still possess ancient manuscripts passed down through generations. International efforts have worked to preserve and digitize these texts, making them accessible to scholars worldwide. The tomb of Askia still draws visitors and pilgrims. The city of Gao remembers him as its greatest ruler. And across West Africa, the memory of the Songhai Empire at its peak serves as a powerful reminder of what African civilization achieved before colonialism disrupted everything. Today, Askia Muhammad appears in history books, video games, and cultural celebrations. The Nigerian musical group Mamar Kase takes its name from him. In the strategy game Civilization V, he represents the Songhai civilization as a playable leader. His tomb in Gao attracts tourists and scholars. The epic of Askia Muhammad, performed by griots across West Africa, keeps his story alive in oral tradition. He's remembered not just as a conqueror or administrator, but as a cultural hero who elevated his people and created something that endured.